Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many a time before. These guys are probably one of my favourite Swedish breweries. They're not afraid to try different styles and I've had some really interesting beers from these guys over the years. I always keep an eye out for the different stuff that they're releasing. But for this review today then, we are going to return to a style that we have had quite a few examples of from them in recent times, and I've heard that this one is pretty nice actually, so curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully it makes for a good review and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. And for this review then we are going to head a little bit out to the east of the city to Landvetter, which is of course home to the wonderful Bryggeri. And yeah, we've got another member of their Bite West Coast IPA series to have a look at today. So this one is called The River. As always, it comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this one focuses on Citra from River Road in Yakima Valley in Washington. So yeah, it's basically got a little bit of Columbus in it as a bittering hop, and then it's got Citra hops from River Road in Yakima, hence the name. But this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021, and it was released along with another beer called The Fort, which had Amarillo hops in it from another farm. But yeah, this one I think should be very interesting. I enjoyed the last set of beers that I had from the Bite series, so yeah, fingers crossed this one is as good as those. And it's always nice, as I say, to review different things from Bryggeri. This is my second beer of 4 that I'm going to be reviewing from them over March 2021. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Really curious about this. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Landvetter, on the kind of eastern outskirts of Gothenburg in Sweden, very close to Gothenburg Landvetter Airport of course. But the brewery was established quite a few years ago in 2005 in Mölndal, to the south of the city, by Mikael Engström Dugge, whom of course it takes its name from. But a few years prior to this, Mikael had met an English guy who was selling second-hand breweries, and this really got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So he studied the admittedly very complex Swedish alcohol laws, visited various other breweries around the country, and started building up his equipment to put together his own brewery, and this culminated with the opening of Bryggeri's first facility in Mölndal back in 2005. Over the following years they continued to build this up, but by 2009 they outgrew their original brewery, and then they moved up to Landvetter the following year in 2010. The older brewery had a capacity of about 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year, but the new brewery started with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres per year, and this has been more than doubled in recent years. But over the years this brewery have become really well known for quite a few different things. Initially it was their fruity sour beers such as the Tropic Thunder that they were well known for, and also the Imperial Stouts, the Egypt. Those two are kind of cult classic Swedish beers. I've never managed to try the original Egypt. I've tried the Big Egypt but never the original. I do hope they re-release that at some point for like an anniversary or something. That would be pretty cool. But the Tropic Thunder is kind of the cult classic Swedish sour beer, if you like. I would recommend that you have a go at that one. In more recent years though, they have been investing a lot in their barrel aging program, which is called the Future series, and then they've been doing a lot of New England hazy IPAs as well. So they've got the Fresh series and the Crush series. They've also got this series, the Bite series, which is the West Coast IPAs. So Fresh and Crush, I think, are both IPAs. I think it's Fresh is the double IPAs, and then Crush, if you like, is the slightly lower alcohol, more sessionable IPAs. And then they've also got, I forget what the new series of the wheat beers is called, but they've got a series of those as well. One of my favourite styles from this brewery definitely has to be the coffee stouts, and I really wish at some point that they would start up like a bean series or something like this. Or a coffee bean series, where they do different imperial stouts with lots of different coffees. Two of the best beers I've ever had from these guys were the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu, which had different types of, I believe both of them were African coffee, Ethiopian and I think Rwandan coffee, if I remember rightly. But yeah, the coffee stouts, if you ever see a coffee stout from these guys, I would say definitely try that. This brewery really got me on to the whole idea of coffee stouts. But yeah, this brewery are one of the most prolific breweries I think you're going to find in Sweden. And another thing to point out is that they're also one of the co-owners of the Two Brewers beer bars in Gothenburg. I would recommend that you go to the Tredje Långgatan one, because that is the original, and they co-own that along with All In Brewery, who are one of the numerous gypsy breweries that operate in the Gothenburg area, and I believe it's also co-owned by Electric Nurse, which is run by Mikael Engström Duga's daughter Ida and her husband John, and they've got some good beers as well, so do check out their stuff. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Dugas Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. I have to say, I'm very, very curious. So yeah, just a little quick look at the artwork for you before we open up. As you can see, it is quite typical of what we've seen from Dugas Bryggeri before. There you can see on the side it tells you Dugas Bryggeri, and it says Bite Series IPA. Like I said, 6.5% ABV, and it says, "We welcome you to River Road, Yakima, Washington, USA with this Bite Series West Coast IPA. Hopped with Columbus for some bitterness, but the real star here is the Citra hop, which gives the beer the aroma and taste experience of all that citrusy tropicalness you've come to love. Northside." So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. I wonder if they mean like north side of Yakima Valley or something like that. But yeah, it's named after the place where the hops actually come from, of course. You can see plain gold bottle cap on this one. I do wish Dugas would just get like black bottle caps with a D on them. I think that would be a really nice touch for their bottles. But anyway, yeah, this one is a 330ml bottle. I think I paid about 35 Swedish kronor for this, so about €3.50, just a little bit over £3 sterling, and maybe about $4.25 American for this little 330ml bottle. But yeah, let's get this guy out then and see how we get on with the tasting. A 6.5% West Coast IPA from Dugas Bryggeri up in Landvetter. So yeah, let's go for it. This I think should be very, very nice. So, as I said, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for March of 2021. The other one was called The Fort, and you'll see that reviewed in a couple of videos time. It was Amarillo hop that was in this one. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, Citra is one of the original OCD check. There we go. It's lined up quite nicely. But Citra is one of the original high alpha acid American hops. You know, I would count Amarillo and Simcoe as being the other ones. And it comes in about 14% alpha acid, gives you lots of mango-y flavours, sometimes some lemon limey notes and a few other things too. So I like how that, I do like how all of that pieces together. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect, this beer's poured a nice kind of medium sort of amber colour. It does lean a little bit more towards the kind of yellow end of the spectrum, to be honest, but it's got a little bit more of that kind of naturally hazy vibe that you would expect from a West Coast IPA, definitely. But you can see that the beer poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head. It's definitely not like a perfect white head that you get on this one, but yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but yeah, it does look pretty damn nice. So yeah, you can see this beer, as I say, it does have a nice little bit of a more kind of natural haze kind of thing to it. So yeah, you can see there's one or two, there's quite a few little bits of, you know, tiny particles floating around in this one. But overall, it does look pretty damn nice. So yeah, I like how this one goes together. Yeah, it certainly looks the part of a West Coast IPA. So yeah, nothing too much more to say about the appearance of this one. It is kind of what you'd expect. You can get IPAs that are a little bit darker than this. You can even get ones that are a little bit lighter than this. But remember, the colour of these beers depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But it is dependent in the first instance on the malt types that you use, and usually an IPA like this will undergo something between like a 70 and a 90-minute wort boil. So yeah, it looks pretty nice, this one. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this beer. That does smell pretty nice, actually. I think this has got a bit of Maris Otter in it, just going from the aroma. So yeah, this one is quite interesting. First thing I'm noticing about this is a little bit of a sort of grainy aroma in the malt base there, and I'm hoping that's not something to do with the hops kind of breaking down. It shouldn't be, because I've had the beer in the fridge maybe about 2 and a bit weeks since it was released, so I'm hoping that this beer hasn't been sitting around a lot before it's been put in the on the shelves at Systembolaget. I really hope that hasn't been the case, because that is one of the risks with the monopoly systems, is that these beers can sit around for a little bit. But I think it is more a graininess. We'll see when we taste it, of course. But yeah, in terms of the aroma then, let's try and break that down a little bit. So straight away, you'll notice with the malt base in this one, there is a little bit of a sort of brown bready, wholemealy sort of thing to this one. You do get a little bit of a brighter kind of white bready quality to this beer as well, which I like. You definitely get some of that coming out of the beer for sure. But yeah, so a little bit of a kind of brown bready, wholemealy sort of thing. As I say, you've got a bit of a more bread crusty quality in there. You get a bit of a kind of bright white bread sort of thing as well. But in the middle of the nose, that's where you get the little bit of brown sugar. There is definitely a little bit of a sweet caramelly note to this one. You get a little bit more of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive kind of element to this beer too. And yeah, I think it works out quite nicely. You can smell a little bit of the booziness out of this, which you would expect from a West Coast IPA, of course. That's a bit, that's very common actually. But yeah, the big kind of the big malty notes in this, I think, go together very, very nicely with everything else that's going on. So yeah, a little bit grainy, as I say, a bit of bread crust, a little bit of white bread too, a wee touch of sweet caramel, some nice biscuity McVitie's digestive notes, and maybe 1 or 2 little tiny woody hints in the malt base as well, which I do quite like. So yeah, there's nothing overly surprising about the malty aromas you get out of this one. I think it comes together quite nicely. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So on the hoppy part of the beer, there is definitely a little touch of earthiness to this one. Columbus, as a bittering hop, can give you that. Columbus tends to be about 12% alpha acid, and it's got a big floral aromatic sort of thing to it. So there's definitely a good bit of that coming out in this one, and I can appreciate that about this beer. So you do get a bit of that kind of spiciness that you normally expect of Columbus. I wouldn't say, some people have seen describe Columbus as piney, but no, for me, Columbus is a lot more of a kind of big spicy floral aromatic sort of thing. But then round at the front nose, at the front tip of the nose, that's when you get the kind of more grassy vibes out of this beer. And both Citra and Columbus are going to give you a little bit of that kind of zestiness to it. So yeah, the green component of this beer, I think, is pretty nice. So yeah, the floral aromatic note out of this, I think, goes together. The floral aromatic note in this beer and the green component just goes together very, very nicely. So yeah, the fruity side of things, I think, complements it quite nicely as well. So let's focus on that. So the green component and the malty side of things, I think, work together very, very well. So fruity wise then, let's talk about that. So with this beer, if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you can get quite a few of the different components that you expect of Citra. Citra is actually quite a complex hop. It's probably one of the most complex hops that's widely used in craft beers. So yeah, at the back of the fruity kind of side of things, you can pick up a little bit of a more pungent passion fruity quality to this one. There's a lot of a kind of oily, juicy mango to this beer as well, which I really appreciate. But then you've also got some sort of lemon limey notes out of this. You do get a little touch of a kind of lemon limey note on the front edge of the tongue with the grassy, or the front, not the front edge of the tongue, the front edge of the nose. You do get a little bit of a kind of lemon limey element to this one, mixing in with the grassy notes, but definitely some big oily mangoes and a little bit of a kind of pungent passion fruit sort of thing coming out of this one. But yeah, it smells like a kind of typical West Coaster actually, and it smells quite similar to the ones that we've had from Dougas Bryggeri in the past. So as I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because I think that's always half the experience when it comes to like craft beer and whiskey and sake and things like that. But yeah, definitely spend a bit of time with that, because this one is quite nice actually, and in an essence this one is kind of like a single hop beer. It is showcasing one particular hop in this with a common bittering hop underneath. So yeah, take a bit of time to enjoy that, but I think it's about time that we get stuck into this one then. So this one is called The River, a 6.5% West Coast IPA from the Bite series at Dougas Bryggeri in Landvetter, just out to the east of Gothenburg here in Sweden on the west coast. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, nice to return to Dougas Bryggeri once again. Skål. Yeah, it's pretty nice actually. You can feel the bitterness of this one kind of building when you first take it in. You don't think it's overly bitter, but you can feel that sort of quality just building out of it the more that you drink of it, definitely. But yeah, the flavour profile of this one I think is pretty nice, so just going to say thumbs up to Dougas Bryggeri for this. This is another solid West Coast IPA. It's quite. It seems to be that Dougas are developing their own kind of signature malt base, if you like, when it comes to these beers, because this one is quite similar to the ones we've had before. So I like how that goes together in this beer, definitely. Yeah. So I do wonder if I'd be able to tell that this was a Dougas beer blind if I tried it without knowing what it is, because it's some of the malty characteristics in this one are becoming quite they're just becoming quite familiar, I have to say. I do like that. I think they've got a little bit of English malt in here. I'm pretty sure there's a wee bit of like Maris Otter or something like that in this, because it's just got a bit of a familiar graininess to it. It does remind me of one of my local brewery back home in Scotland, Williams Brothers. There's just a little bit of that sort of grainy vibe about the malt base in this one. So yeah, kind of interesting for sure. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer then. So for me then, straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice sort of bready quality just blanketing at the middle of your palate there. And it comes across as a mix. I mean, you do get some white bready elements to it, but you can definitely feel a nice, how would you say, you can feel a nice little bit of a kind of grainy, wholemealy brown bready sort of thing in there as well. So the backbone of the beer for me is quite grainy and wholemealy, but then on top of that you get some of the white bready notes, and that kind of lingers there. But then on top of that, the bready layer is actually quite, it's got a good bit of smoothness to it and almost just a little bit of sweetness. But in the very centre of your palate, with this one, you've got a lovely kind of, you've got a good little bit of a, how would you say, you have a little bit of a straight up sweet caramel in the middle of your palate there. That's the alcohol coming out of the beer, but I think at the same time there is also, I've got a feeling there is a bit of Maris Otter in this one, because yeah, in the very centre of your palate there's a bit of a straight up sweet caramel there. As you move further out from that, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. And yeah, that's, for me, usually Maris Otter has that nice bready note underneath, a bit of a more wholemealy bread, a bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and a sweet kind of caramelly quality as well. So yeah. So yeah, straight up sweet caramel in the middle of your palate there as you move further out, as I say, it becomes a little bit more McVitie's digestive biscuity and sort of things. It's almost, I think maybe there is a wee teeny bit of an almost toasty like caramel there, but it really becomes more and more biscuity as you push out towards the edge of the palate there. So yeah, wholemeal bread, a little bit of white bread, some bread crusty elements in there as well, sweet caramel, and then biscuit underneath that just kind of spreads out a little bit towards the edge of the tongue. That is the centre of your palate in this one. If you go to the front corners of your palate and move diagonally back a little bit, you'll get one or two little woody elements out of the beer. But you know, that is kind of to be expected in honesty. So yeah, I like how that goes together in this one, definitely. Let's move on to the hoppy side of things then. I don't think there's too much more to say about the malty side of this thing then, because it is, I mean, it is quite common. The only other thing to say, I would think, would be to talk a little bit about the back third of the palate, and it's actually quite similar. I mean, on that border region between the middle and back third of your tongue, you can feel the breadiness does just thicken up a little bit. Then you get a wee bit of a sort of dry, grainy, bread crusty note there sitting on top of it. So it does get a wee bit kind of thicker almost in that border region there. In the back third of your palate, you can feel some more kind of grainy, bread crusty sort of elements, and on top of that, you've got a little bit of the more kind of airy, kind of yeasty type elements there. So at the back of the palate, it feels a little bit airier and a bit kind of thicker, but then you can feel that gradually sort of condenses as you move further forward. Then on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it sort of densifies quite quickly. Then you've just got that slightly thicker, more dense layer in the middle third of your palate. So yeah, I think that covers the malty side of this beer quite well. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness coming out of the beer. So yeah, definitely a little bit of earthiness in there. And as you move further forward along the side of the palate, the earthiness quickly gives way to a little touch of herbal quality, but then as you move progressively further forward, it gives you a kind of big spicy floral aromatic note out of the beer, and that is your Columbus hop. The Columbus is giving you this little bit of spicy floral aromatic note. It's not overpowering, if you like, but it's definitely got a good little bit of bite to it. You can see why they call the series the bite series of IPAs. But then round the front curve of the palate, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy in my mind. Absolutely, it's definitely a little bit more of a kind of lighter, grassy sort of thing to this one, and the grassiness does actually have a little touch of zesty quality to it as well. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. So yeah, the green component of this one isn't a surprise. It's got a little bit of bitterness to it, but it's not the craziest, I would say. So yeah, I like how this. I do like. Pardon me, how all of this goes together. So yeah, green component for me gets a thumbs up, absolutely. But let's focus on the fruity side of things then. So yeah, as I always say, fruity side of your beer comes out on that front third of your palate. You get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. On the border region between middle and front third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit, you do have a nice little bit of kind of bready, grainy sort of thing. So I like how that goes together. Absolutely. So you can feel that on the border region between middle third and front third of your palate, you just get a bit of that thicker kind of grainy note, that thicker bready note out of it, a little bit of bread crust, and then the base of that front third of your palate is a sort of brown bready, wholemealy sort of thing, but it does have a wee degree of sweetness to it as well. But yeah, the backbone of that front third of the palate is quite nice. But yeah, if you go to the back of that front third of your tongue, then there's a lovely sort of how would we say? There's a lovely little bit of a kind of stronger passion fruity element coming out of the beer, so definitely a little bit of that there towards the back of the front third of your palate. And then as you move further forward, you can feel it gradually mellows out and gives you a more sort of oily, mangoey type quality, and that's what you would expect of the citra hop. So yeah, passion fruit at the back, a little bit more mangoey, a little bit more of an oily mangoey thing as you move further forward. So yeah. So yeah, I do like how that kind of goes together in this beer. The thing is with West Coast IPAs, when you've got a more sort of brown sugary caramelly malt base like this, and the fruits tend to be a little bit more oily, whereas in a New England IPA, when you've got the oats and things like this, giving you the smoothness. It does tend to come across as a bit more juicy. So yeah, you definitely have to remember that about these beers. So passion fruit, oily mango, but then as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you've got a few, you've got some nice, some really nice, more oily, fruity characteristics going on in this one. So yeah, I think that that goes together very, very nicely as well. So yeah, everything that's going on in this beer, I think, is really interesting. Actually, I very much like how this. I very much like how this beer goes about its business. But on the front half of that front third of your tongue, it does develop a little bit more of a kind of citrusy character. I find that in this beer, the citra is showing a little bit more of its kind of lemon limey notes. So I do get a little bit of a limey quality, and maybe a slight gooseberry as well in the front half of that front third of your tongue. But as you reach the very tip of your tongue, it shows a little bit of a lemony zestiness as well, which I do like. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer for me is quite interesting. It really shows the more oily elements of it really shows me the more oily elements of citra, which I think works out really nicely. So yeah, this beer gets a thumbs up for me. I have to say I am curious to try the Fort and the Amarillo sort of version, if you like. I think that one's going to work out really nicely, because the more oily oranges I think will suit this profile even better than the citra does. So yeah, this is quite a nice West Coast IPA, I have to say. Definitely leaning towards the more kind of bready end of the spectrum, as I've kind of found out in recent times. You know, a West Coast IPA can be a little bit more kind of bready leaning, such as Pliny the Elder, or it can be a little bit more sort of oily and caramelly, such as the Torpedo from Sierra Nevada. So there's two different ways you can take a West Coast IPA, oily and caramelly, or a more kind of bready and biscuity sort of thing, and this one is most definitely the latter. But yeah, another solid beer from Dugas Bryggeri in my mind. So yeah, let's round off this review with the mouthfeel then. Let's do that. So yeah, in terms of the how would you say, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, then what would we say? I think we would go with mid-bodied with this one. The carbonation is very, very smooth. This beer, I know it's got a little bit of an oily character to it and a little bit of slickness, I would definitely say that, but there is also a wee bit of smoothness and sweetness forming the malt base in this one. So I would say that this is a little bit of a slick. I think slick is a good descriptor for this beer. Absolutely, I like how that, I do like how that side of things pieces together. So yeah, this beer I think has some really interesting qualities to it. So yeah, I think mid-bodied, smooth carbonation, a little bit of an oily and kind of slick mouthfeel overall. The malt base for me has a good bit of smoothness underneath and a little bit of grainyness, but it does develop to be a little bit more kind of sweet the further that you go into it. And yeah, I can appreciate that about this one. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this beer's maybe about 50 IBUs or 60, but I think 60 is probably a bit more likely, to be honest with you. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of its hoppy bitterness, and not many West Coast IPAs these days are, to be honest with you, because people have really gotten more used to the kind of New England hazy sort of thing, so a lot of breweries are taking the bitterness of these beers down, which kind of makes sense in a way, but I do miss an old school kind of 80, 90, 100 IBU West Coast IPA. But yeah, it does work quite nicely. But yeah, in terms of the fruity side of things, it's got a nice oily fruitiness to it. I think it does give you, the fruits give you a little bit of sweetness later on. But yeah, another solid West Coast IPA from Dugas. Definitely have a go at this one if you get the chance. But I have to say, this one makes me a bit more curious about the Amarillo. I was always a sucker for Amarillo and the orangey leaning IPAs anyway. But yeah, thumbs up to Dugas for this, definitely. But on that note, I think we can round off this review. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dugas Bryggeri as well. You will see me review more from these guys over the next while, because I really do enjoy this brewery's beers. This one was another member of their Bite series, which is their West Coast IPA. Check out the other series as well for sure. Let me know your own thoughts on this one in the comment section below. And yeah, check out some of the Dugas beers. The Tropic Thunder, the Egypt are definitely the classics. If you find a coffee stout, I'd recommend that, and their IPAs are pretty damn solid these days as well. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Dugas Bryggeri, and I will see you guys in the next review. This one was The River, a 6.5% West Coast IPA, part of the Bite series from Dugas Bryggeri in Landvetter, just to the east of Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. Slange, skål, cheers, thanks for watching, I'll catch you in the next review.